Hello and welcome to another episode of Twice as Lively with Ken Heckenlively. That would be me, your host for episode 60. I don't know why, but for some reason, getting to 60 episodes means a lot more to me than getting to 50 episodes. Maybe because it's 60 strikes me as 2 solid months of work. So, I hope you're celebrating something similar, something new that you tried that you didn't know if you'd be able to do, but hopefully you have accomplished. So, as always, I have my Pete's coffee here. It is a cafe Americano with a little bit of room for cream and honey because you always need something sweet with your caffeine, or at least I do. So it is a little after 11 o'clock on the West Coast. So that means anywhere in the continental United States, you should not be having alcohol during the workday. But if you do, if a little bit of alcohol is what you need to get through your workday or your regular day, well, I'm not going to make any judgments because we have lots of opinions here on Twice as Lively with Ken Heckenlively, but we don't have judgments. We're a little bit of a judgment-free zone. We'll let you make the judgments. I'll have the opinions, you have the judgments. Okay, so get your beverage ready. Here we go for that simultaneous sip. Ah, so delicious. So for my 60th episode, what kind of trouble am I going to get into? Well, the title of the episode is Spiderman Goes MAGA. That's right, Spiderman Goes MAGA. So if you don't know, there is a new Spider-Man movie out called Spider-Man Brand New Day. As of this morning, Monday, August 10th, 2026, the global box office for this movie, which has been open for, I think, a week, a little more, maybe 10 days, is $1.665 billion. That's right. Spider-Man Brand New Day in 10 days has grossed $1.665 billion. Well, I'm fascinated by successful stories. So when I see a story which resonates with the public so much, I got to get to know more about it. So I went and saw Spider-Man Brand New Day last Friday, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And, I wasn't going to talk about it, but the more I reflected on it, I thought, no, this is an important moment. It's important that I put on the record some of my thoughts about Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, the famous Andrew Breitbart, who created Breitbart News, which I check out pretty much every morning, had a saying that culture is downstream from politics. So think about that. That means what we fight about in the political realm, which ideas win and which ideas lose, eventually show up in our entertainment. And I have to say, as I am watching various movies and shows, I am seeing MAGA victories. So in the show The Diplomat, which I really recommend, one of the two main characters, Hal, is openly negotiating with conservative Republicans to get what he needs accomplished. And I thought, wow, It's been a long time since a major character is talking to conservative Republicans like they're human beings. They might have a different perspective, but they are members of the human family, and you might want to work with them. And so I had sort of the same thoughts about Spider-Man Brand New Day. And I thought, wow, I come up with an entire set of principles of why Spider-Man Brand New Day is just knocking down the doors of the competition. And the more I kept developing this idea, the more I said, this really works. Spider-Man Brand New Day is a MAGA film. I know, you don't believe it's possible, but let me simply go through all of the ways that Spider-Man Brand New Day is a MAGA film. First of all, you've got the main character, Tom Holland as Peter Parker, the Spider-Man. He's just like a nice white guy, a nice white young guy. In the previous movie, he realized that because of his role as Spider-Man, the people he loved were in danger. And so, working with Doctor Strange, he cast a spell which would make all of his friends forget who he was. Sacrifice. Sacrifice is what heroes do. It was a painful sacrifice. And in the beginning of Spider-Man Brand New Day, we see Peter Parker living with the consequences of that sacrifice. What does he choose to do? He chooses to simply focus on fighting crime in New York City. And as we see him go around for a couple years, we see that he is very successful in getting crime to drop dramatically in New York City, so he's a great success. But it's not enough, because we as human beings need more than to be successful. We need relationships. And that's what Peter Parker is missing. He's missing the relationship with his former girlfriend, MJ, and his former friend, Ned. Now, here's another way this is a MAGA film. MJ is biracial. Ned is Filipino. Does any of that matter to the story? Absolutely not. MJ and Ned are just interesting people. MJ, for example, is very smart. She can get any job she wants, but she doesn't want to work for a soulless corporation. She wants her life to matter. Ned is also very smart, gets into MIT, but he seems to have something of a substance abuse problem with his energy drinks, and he has a hole in his life where his good friend Peter Parker and the Spider-Man was. He doesn't quite realize that his creation of a Spider-Man tracker is really an attempt to connect with his old friend Peter Parker. And so a MAGA principle is that we don't care about your ethnicity or your gender. All we care about is the content of your character. Who was it in American history that said they dreamed of a day when individuals would be judged not by the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. It's no surprise that a lot of the left is looking to jettison the work of Martin Luther King Jr. in favor of a more radical agenda, which brings racism back by making us all members of groups rather than individuals. It's individuals that we care about, not groups. Spider-Man Brand New Day makes it very clear who you are is what matters, not the color of your skin or your gender. This theme continues throughout the film. There's this great actress, Liza Kolanzayas. I'm probably mispronouncing that name. I'm so sorry. She plays Detective Jane DeWolf, who works for the NYPD, and she is Peter Parker's contact in the police department. The detective is Puerto Rican, Spanish, and Black, so she's a mix. It's kind of like I'm a mix. Does it matter what her various ethnicities are or her gender? Absolutely not. She is just a good human being trying to do well by New York City. She also has some kids who idolize Spider-Man. Is there any question or any issue that her Black kids love the white Spider-Man? Well, we don't really know he's white, but let's just assume that they did. It wouldn't matter. Doesn't matter to Spider-Man because whenever he's calling up Detective DeWolf and her kids are there, they're all excited that she's talking to Spider-Man and they want to make sure they say hi to Spider-Man. Okay? This is my experience with human beings. My experience with human beings is, yeah, being a man, a woman, different races, it's part of who you are, but it's not really the interesting part of who you are. The interesting part is not your gender or your background, but who you are. So then there's another character who's critical in Spider-Man Brand New Day, played by the actor Tremel Tillman. And this character in the film is Bill Metzger, also William. He is the head of the Department of Damage Control. And he seems like a good guy. He is also African American. It turns out he is not a good guy. It turns out the Department of Damage Control is doing some very underhanded things. Does that have anything to do with his race? No. It has to do with organizations. And so this is another MAGA value. And this is something that I don't think liberals get. And it surprises me because I remember growing up in the 60s and 70s, and it seemed, to me at least, that liberals understood this better than conservatives. And that is, all organizations have both a positive and a negative aspect to them. In order to get important things done, we will need to work together in organizations. Got it. However, the liberals of the 60s and 70s were very critical, and properly so, of the FBI and the CIA and their attempts to discredit progressive groups. It seems like liberals have amnesia about liberals of the 60s and 70s. And I grew up hearing those criticisms. So in Spider-Man Brand New Day, it's really clear that Detective Jane DeWolf of the NYPD is an example of a person working for an organization which is doing the right thing and is above board. Bill Metzger, played by Tremel Tillman of the Department of Damage Control, is an example of an organization that has gone rogue. It has its public persona and it has its private persona. It's my belief that today conservatives have this inherent understanding that if you don't have transparency from an organization, a whole lot of things can go bad. And that's why Republicans are trying to shine light on many important organizations and processes like counting votes. It seems like whether our election system is secure should be of value to everybody, but apparently it's not. So here's how Spider-Man Brand New Day is a MAGA movie. It's a MAGA movie because even though there are people of different genders and races, those differences don't matter. The important thing is who they are as individuals. The movie has a great depiction of an organization which functions ethically and honestly, the new NYPD, New York Police Department, and a fictional organization, the Department of Damage Control, which is acting unethically. So conservatives seem to naturally understand that we need organizations to accomplish important things, but by the same token, those organizations, especially if they get powerful, are going to need to be watched very closely. Some other people of note in the film: Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. She plays, I don't understand all the Marvel characters. I want to call her like the witch or something like that. I don't know. I know she comes from the I believe, no, from X-Men. Doesn't matter. She's just got a whole lot of powers. And she's a redhead. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Then we have Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, which I think comes from the Black Widow series of movies. She's a blonde Russian. Doesn't matter that she's a blonde Russian. Well, aside from the really cool accent, no, it doesn't matter. She's just a good person. Mark Ruffalo as Dr. Bruce Banner / the Hulk. Does it matter that he's an older white guy? No, not at all. The only thing that seems to matter is that he's an older guy, and so he's got a little bit of wisdom to him, and he's trying to make sure that Peter Parker goes on the right path. There's another character who I'm really not familiar with, John Bernthal, who plays Frank Castle. I think he's the Punisher. And, you know, he looks like he's Latin, Italian. I'm not sure. Does it matter? No. He's Peter Parker's friend, and he's kind of crazy, but he's got a good heart, and that's all that matters. I don't care anything about anything else about him, except that it seems like he has a good heart, and he's got a different perspective. Sometimes that perspective is the right perspective. Other times, it's totally wrong. So, Spider-Man, whether you like it or not, is a MAGA movie. Its success with the general public means that it's in accord with the way most people feel about the world. Most people feel about the world that the important thing is not what race or gender or religion you are. It is only what's in your heart and what do you do? Are you good to people or are you not? Now, how can I directly connect that to MAGA? Well, here we go. President Trump is supposed to be an anti-immigrant guy. That's what the left says about him. But if you look at two of the three women who he's married, they are both immigrants, Ivanka and Melania. So it's not quite accurate to call Trump an anti-immigrant person. He doesn't like illegal immigration, but it seems like he values immigrants. I mean, it's kind of like the argument that I heard one woman making that Trump is anti-woman. And I looked at her and I said, how can you say that? He's married three of them. It seems he likes women. They didn't know what to do when I said that. It was just like, that did not compute. Okay, again, let me talk about MAGA values. MAGA values are, we just want to know who you are as a person. Your race, your religion, it doesn't matter. Is there anybody in politics today who is more associated with being a Christian and an authentic Christian? I'm reading his book, Communion, than J.D. Vance. So J.D. Vance, in American public life, the uber Christian, and, well, he converted to Catholicism, so he joined my tribe. So J.D. Vance is the uber Christian in American political life. And people seem to genuinely think that. Who is he married to? A Hindu. So I'm reading his book, Communion, and it's very clear to me that Usha is just an awesome person, as described by J.D. Vance. He is not only brilliant, which is one thing, but she's got wisdom. Just because she could get the most powerful position that she wanted doesn't mean that she decides that's what she wants to do. And so, even though the media can go, how can you be such a Christian and be married to a Hindu? Well, it's because when you're MAGA, you look at the person, not the color or the religion or all this other bullshit that the left accuses the right of being. I would argue that the right is now more in tune with Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of a better America than the left. The left seems to be engaged in bringing back racial and gender animosity in ways that are so incredibly harmful. I want to pivot to something that I think is important if you want to be a thinking human being involved in the public debate. So I call this the Ken Heckenlively civic hygiene lesson. If you want to participate in the public discussion of important issues, you have to practice good civic hygiene. What is good civic hygiene? Good civic hygiene means that you make your point as clearly as you can, and then you listen to those on the other side who are clearly making their points. When I was a kid, surprise, surprise, I was very conservative and law and order oriented. And I would say I didn't vary much from being a traditional conservative. But my family was also involved in the law. My dad was a lawyer, my mom was involved in public education. And so The intellectual life was important. If you want to have an intellectual life, you have to confront different ideas. Otherwise, you're not learning. So in my youth, even though I was very conservative, I was always listening when people like criminal defense attorneys Jerry Spence, F. Lee Bailey, constitutional lawyer William Kunstler, and people like Alan Dershowitz spoke. It was clear that their ideas of justice were different than mine, but I acknowledged their intellect. I was challenged by their ideas. And over time, I've come to adopt many of those positions, which I did not have at that time. In law school, I was working for the U.S. Attorney's Office during the summer times, and I was working on drug cases. And I had a law professor, a constitutional lawyer, or a criminal defense lawyer and constitutional lawyer named Bernie Siegel, who was absolutely one of the most entertaining men I have ever met in my life. He was incredibly colorful. He was the criminal defense attorney for Jeffrey McDonald, the so-called Green Beret killer, who is accused of killing his wife and his family. He claimed that they were murdered by a group that were of hippies like the Manson family. It was a big movie on TV, big show. And, Bernie was a big liberal. And at the time I met him, he was spending a lot of his time defending drug dealers from this government program, which before they were convicted of being a drug dealer, the government would come in and make an allegation that they were a drug dealer, and then they would seize their financial assets so that these alleged drug dealers could not pay their attorneys. And so, me being a law and order guy was saying, yeah, that's a good thing. Stop those drug dealers from paying their high priced attorneys to get them off. And Bernie argued very vociferously against it. And I was always intrigued by his arguments. And so at the time, although I listened to his arguments, I wasn't convinced by it. But as time has gone by, and I've seen that what Bernie Siegel had claimed, that these laws would be used against lots of people, I begin to understand that you must be very vigilant against any abridgment of constitutional rights. And so, civic hygiene is very important. And so, I believe that one of the things that's missing in our society is we're not practicing good civic hygiene. What we're doing is, if somebody disagrees with us, we're calling them names. Now, I will tell you very clearly, I think Trump is doing a great job in running the country. And I actually think that the Iran war will turn out to be an enormous benefit, not just to the United States, but to the world. I could totally be wrong. There is a large group of people, Lionel Nation, Candace Owens, Jimmy Dore, and others, who are saying that this was an absolute terrible mistake. Trump is kowtowing to Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli lobby, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that's true. But let me tell you what I do know is true. All of the people I mentioned are brilliant. They are at the very top of their game. I am going and listening to Lionel Nation constantly. As I'm listening to him, I'm coming up with my own counter arguments for why I think he's wrong. And if I was ever to be in a debate with him, I would list them. I wouldn't call him names. In fact, I'd love to, hang out, shoot the breeze with them. Love to do the same thing with Candace because there's a lot of things that I agree on. And so I think my message to you is listen to the smart people, even if they are expressing opinions which you don't agree with. On the question of the Charlie Kirk assassination, I have to say, Candace Owens, Lionel Nation, Jimmy Dore, and others are raising all the right questions. If I'm sitting in the jury box, I'm much more on their side rather than the side that says it was just Tyler Robinson and shut up with all the questions. I'm not a shut up with all the questions kind of guy. I'm a ask all the questions, answer them, and then I'll come to an opinion. If you short circuit the process, I'm not going to think you're being honest. So, to my listeners, I give you this challenge. Are you practicing good civic hygiene in your viewing habits and when you talk to others? Are you giving them time to fully explain themselves? Are you pausing for a moment in order to consider their thoughts? And are you actually using that brain which God gave you? I hope that you are. And no matter how much I may disagree with people, I hope that I am always practicing good civic hygiene. Well, that's all I have for you today. Hopefully, this is not the best part of your day. Hopefully, the best part of your day is talking to people in your own life and not just listening to some good looking dude on the internet. All right. Thanks a lot, America.